You're listening to Why We Do What We Do. Welcome to Why We Do What We Do. I am your nostalgic wrap-up host, Abraham.
And I am your, what does Pete Holmes say? He talks about how annual, New Year's is just like us celebrating the truck of the odometer of the earth rolling over. And he's like, so it's, so I'm the ambivalent about the new year host, Shane.
Great. We're a psychology podcast. We talk about all the psychology things and behavior analysis things and the skeptic things. And that's kind of our shtick, if you will. And at the end of the year, people don't really listen to us. So we just do a quick wrap up. That's not why. It's actually just kind of a fun reflection. That's what I should have been. The reflective host. Recapitulating host, maybe.
In reflection, it makes sense.
Exactly. And we just talk sort of about the year that has passed, a recap. And so this is going to be an easy listening, sort of mega recommend, maybe sort of discussion. We're just going to talk about so many things that have happened this year. I mean, it's going to be short, actually. There's not that. I mean, there's a ton that we could discuss, but as it is relevant to the podcast, we're going to keep it fairly neutral. We're going to, talk about some major milestones this year. We're going to do a quick recap on our episodes. We're going to talk about our Spotify Wrapped, because that's where we get our we actually get our best data analytics from Spotify. We're going to talk about some of the entertainment that we have consumed this year, books, movies, and TV. We're going to reflect on some of the people we have lost this year, and we'll probably not find them because we mean lost in the euphemistic way, where they are no longer with us. And then we're going to give some quick recommendations, and then we're going to say see you next year, I think.
And the idea being that we will be here next year, and so we hope to see you next year, and that you hope to see us next year. It would be a different conversation if you did not want to see us, if you were like, your New Year's resolution was not to listen to Why We Do What We Do, which would be a real bummer. So hopefully that's not your resolution.
Yeah.
And if it is, do better.
Yeah. So at the time that this comes out, we hope that you have had a wonderful holiday, whatever holidays you were celebrating, and we will wish you a happy new year, assuming you are following the Gregorian calendar, which many of you are not.
Nope.
But happy new year to those for whom this is relevant. We're wrapping this up. We will see you next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. In perpetuity.
Forever.
Forever. That was a Sandlot reference, by the way.
The greatest movie ever made.
So this episode comes out on December 27th. Let's recognize that today is post-Christmas-ish day, but it's also National Fruitcake Day.
Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, it's in line with this because people made it and then nobody ate it, and so now it's just sitting around waiting to collect mold.
That's why it's on the 27th.
Yeah.
It's also International Day of Epidemic Preparedness, which I feel like is fairly new given the circumstances over the last 4 or 5 years.
Get your masks, get your gloves, get your hand sanitizers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
National Make Cutout Snowflakes Day. I feel like this one would have preceded Christmas by a little bit, but I mean, sure,
yeah. It's also National Visit the Zoo Day, so I guess do with that what you will.
This is an odd time of year to make that the day to go to the zoo, which is mostly an outdoor activity. So okay. Also, it occurs to me that in the southern hemisphere, National Make Cutout Snowflakes is like June, depending on where you're at.
So for our Australian listeners, they're like very confused by that one.
Yeah, they're in shorts and tank tops. So,
but I guess that's why it's national and not international.
You make a very good point. So sorry, Australians, we're not recognizing your National Beach Wear Day or whatever it is.
Or just do that, or just cut snowflakes out in the summer. That's fine too. Like confuse your friends.
Why not?
be the chaotic good your community needs.
That's right. And speaking of which, it is Free Balloon Day. Now, mostly balloons are kind of a scourge on our environment, so I'm not sure that I want to encourage that much, but if you're wanting to participate, today's the day to celebrate.
Yeah. It's also Howdy Doody Week or Howdy Doody Day. Sorry, not the week. Okay. That's too much to celebrate Howdy Doody. So it's Howdy Doody Day.
I'm not as familiar with that show as I probably should be, but I'm given to understand, based on its age alone, there's a certain amount of racism we'll probably have to worry about that was embedded in that. But
sure.
For another time.
I don't think you're expected to know anything about Howdy Doody. Like, I don't think there's an expectation for people our age to be familiar with that show.
That's fair. And yet we mentioned it. So
yes, here we are.
It's About Time Week. That sounds like a non sequitur, but that is what the week is called.
Yes, it is. So everybody get your watches. It's also, as of 12/26, the start of Kwanzaa. So for those who celebrate.
So yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday. I believe you say Happy Kwanzaa?
I think it's Happy Kwanzaa. Merry Kwanzaa. Celebratory Kwanzaa.
A jovial Kwanzaa to you?
Yeah. Sorry, we don't know. I've tried not to appropriate that custom, but I should just know more about it. Maybe we should do an episode on Kwanzaa someday. That'd be good.
I think we should. You're right. And it is Happy Kwanzaa.
Great. Okay. Let's talk about what we've been up to this year. Some of the milestones that we've hit, some of the things that we've seen. We hit our 300th episode this year. We are now well past that and on our way to 400 next year, but
yep.
No, not next year actually, because this is 346 and there'll be there, so there are still 54 more weeks before we'll get to 400. So that'll actually be 2025. That'll hit our 400th episode. But nevertheless, 300, It was great. It was exciting. We talked about Spartans. So yeah, we have been a podcast running for 6 years, 6.5 actually, since we started in May. But that's kind of cool. Just something to celebrate. That's longer than most podcasts make it, actually. I should get the actual stats on that, but it is like way past the average of how long most podcasts actually last.
Yeah, so that just tells us we haven't learned our lesson.
It kind of does, actually, because there are podcasts that have come and gone since we started this one that I listened to, and then they petered out and went away. And I know for a fact that they were much more listened to than we are.
Yeah, it's a wild thing, but no, I think that I think it's a pretty great stat to think about. It's a long time to put together a lot of content and have it kind of out. And I think it's really important for us to kind of pat ourselves on the back. But we've been consistently every week getting stuff out for 6 years. I think I think there's maybe like only been 1 or 2 weeks that there's been a hiccup, but like that's a pretty good streak for a podcast.
We were late a few times in like the second year of the podcast, and I think we maybe missed one altogether, but I think that's it. And we've been consistent. And I try and have the episode go out early in the morning every Wednesday, but I have been also a little late and it's gone like later in the morning, maybe early afternoon for some people.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it has been like clockwork. We've been pretty tight on our release.
Yeah, it's nice.
I started this insane project on March 10th of 2021. I decided I was going to read an article, one whole article from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, more commonly referred to as JABA, every day, or the equivalent. So like if I missed a day, then the next day I would read 2. If I missed 2 days, then the next day I'd read 3, et cetera, just to make sure I stayed caught up. And this year, December 6th, actually, I read my 1000th article from this journal.
Wow.
I did not start at the beginning of the journal's history. I started at the issue that I had a tangible copy of and then just went from there.
Okay.
So I'm getting close to being caught up to where they're at, but of course new issues are coming out every 4 times a year. So it'll take me a while to be fully caught up, and then I'm going to go back and start at the very beginning. So it's like 5 more years of this at least, maybe 10.
Yeah, it's a lot more.
But yeah, I got to because that actually only covers like that 1,000 articles covers like 10 years of content roughly.
That's wild.
Yeah, and the journal's been going since 1968, so there's a lot for me to read, and so it has been an interesting experiment in self-flagellation via journal reading, but that is where we're at.
What was the 1000th article? Do you remember?
I should remember. It's actually it's out in my bag right now. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a replication article that was looking at, do other behaviors actually increase during a DRO? I think that was
okay.
One. Yeah.
Interesting.
It was a replication of an article by Joshua Jessel.
Okay.
I think
Joshua Jessel stuff's cool. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Super interesting stuff. As part of my recap for the year, apparently I learned, according to my Spotify Wrapped, that I listened to 45 straight days of music. 45 or 54? I said 45. I meant to say 54. I listened to 54 total days of music in the year.
Wow. That is so much.
There's a lot of music to listen to. It's like 84,000 minutes or something like that.
Way to go. That's impressive.
Yeah. Hey, thanks.
So go for 108 next year. Double it.
I'm going for it. I'm going to double it.
So here, let's recap our episodes that we've talked about. We'll do a little bit of time on each, I think, or some kind of discussion. I don't know, comments or something. But we started this year, 2023, with a 2-part series on immigration. That was an interesting and fun series that we did that I think fondly on, actually. A lot of the time, I have completely forgotten episodes that we've done, and even sometimes what we talked about in those episodes. And that will be the case for some of these. But that one I actually do remember fondly.
That one was a lot of fun to put together. This year, we were talking about this before we got on. This year, we didn't do any interviews.
Yeah.
And we didn't do a lot of nostalgia episodes. So that meant that like everything that we did during the year was like brand new original stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good feat as well.
Yeah.
We did the John B. Watson episode, his biography, which, you know, you learn that he was probably not the person to write parenting books.
No, he was an interesting, maybe not catalyst, maybe catalyst. He was an interesting figure that really got a lot of attention and shaped things around him for a period of time, and in not so great ways all the time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Burned a lot of his records of his stuff later in life. So there was that.
Yeah, it's like he burned all his journals.
In response to the direction the world has been going, we decided it was time to talk about authoritarianism. I think about this episode too because authoritarianism continues to rear its ugly head around the world. We just had a new government come into place. I think in it wasn't Brazil, it was somewhere else.
Argentina.
Yep, that's the one. So some countries have sort of swayed a little more liberal and freedom oriented. Some have gone the opposite. A lot have gone the opposite direction into a more authoritarian leaning. You know, I don't understand. We've done this experiment. Authoritarianism is the worst way to govern people.
Yeah.
And yet they just keep doing it and people keep choosing it for some reason. So
yeah, it's weird. That was a fun episode though. And I think that was one of those episodes where it was really nice that you and I feel like as the show has been going on, a little bit more of our like values are starting to show more. Like I think that this podcast has always been kind of like very, very like in line with like the values of getting science out and having those discussions. But I think that some of the topics that we're tackling are a little bit more like, oh, I'm having this thought or having this experience about this thing, or I'm having a particular emotion about this thing. Let's explore that. And so it's been kind of fun doing like a values exploration on the show too.
That's a great way of summarizing that. I completely agree.
Yeah, it's been great. We did an episode on ultra processed foods.
Yeah. I think about that sometimes. There's sort of some controversy around that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the thing, we didn't really dig into like the science of nutrition on it, but it was good. As we said, when we did 300, we decided to talk about the Spartans just because of the movie 300, but
yeah,
the sort of lore around the Battle of Thermopylae. So that was kind of cool. A wild time in history.
Yeah. Speaking of wild times in history, we also did, we talked about feral people.
That was really good.
You know, I thought that one was a lot of fun because I think kind of coming up in psychology and especially kind of getting into behaviorism, we spend so much time hearing the argument of like nature versus nurture. Like everybody wants to know. And I thought that was a really great kind of example of being like, well, here's how context does everything to somebody.
Yeah, that was actually one that I forgot that we had done earlier this year. And I do remember the discussion now, but I would, if someone said to list some episodes from this year, that would not have been in that list if I had not been looking at it. You put together a very nice episode on fan fiction, which was both a lot of fun and actually got us some really nice listener mail that we read some of on the show. So that was cool.
That was a cool one. That one was a lot of fun. I remember kind of getting into that and just being like, so worried of making sure that I wanted to be so respectful of people that write fan fiction because it is like a creative pursuit. And I really have the value of like not just crapping on somebody's creative pursuit if possible. Like I don't want to yuck somebody's yum. So I really went in there because like I had a particular like bias towards fan fiction before going in. And I think I came out of it a little bit different.
I believe that's the one where I learned that Twilight was fan fiction for 50 Shades of Grey. That spawned its own.
Yep. That's it.
A few years ago, maybe it was last year, I don't remember, but at least last year before, we did an episode that was unpacking how alcohol makes us feel drunk. And this year we did one unpacking how THC makes us feel high. And we got to go in like the history of like cannabis and where it started probably being cultivated by humans and where it originated and why it works and how it works. That was a fun one. I think about that one a lot actually, because there was a lot that I learned from that episode that was really fascinating. So I think that was a cool one this time.
Yeah, that one was a cool one. I think that's kind of leading us to some other topics that we're talking about this year. The possibility of doing like psilocybin and LSD and kind of how those work and what they do and the therapeutic properties. I mean, we even did we do it this year that we did the one on ketamine?
No, that was last year.
That was last year.
Good point. Good reflection.
But that was like, so I like those episodes where it's like how like, you know, and I can't wait to eventually get to like the mescaline episodes and stuff like that, and like all the things that stuff does. We did an episode on the bicameral mind hypothesis, which, thinking back on that, I still don't know that I understand it that well.
Yeah, it was a weird one, but that one was I wanted to bring a level of skepticism that I felt like too few people had brought to that conversation as it was making it out into the world again. So we needed to unpack that with a little more critical eye, if you will.
Yes.
And thinking about this, we've got this, like, we're going to have a suite of episode on drugs, a suite of episode on sleep, a suite of episode on politics. There is a emerging suite of episode on animals, and even potentially a subcategory inside of that is specifically on dogs, because we did an episode on seizure alert dogs this year, which was really cool.
That one was really cool.
We did a 3-part series on facilitated communication. Some of our best received and widely distributed episodes, not the most, but it was up there. We got a lot of attention for that. That was a really important series to do. I felt really strongly about how we handled that, and that we handled it in the way that we did. So I was pretty proud of the final product we got, but that was a cool milestone this year.
Yeah, and as far as I know, we didn't get a lot of hate mail for that one.
No, we mostly got support. We mostly got some really good support.
Yeah, that was nice. We did one on swearing, which is my favorite pastime.
You're right, yeah.
I curse so much. Like, I feel like, Justin Greenhouse, the person that is responsible for making us sound really nice.
Yeah.
I feel so bad because I feel like he has to beep so much of my audio because of how much I swear.
Y'all get a pretty sanitized version of our discussions. We are, we do not hold back most of the time and force Justin to work hard.
Yes.
In the sort of political realm, there was a lot of attention going out and continues to go out around this idea of wokeism. I think fortunately enough, it's been parodied and cartoonized, if you will, enough by people that it's less of a talking point anymore. I like to believe we had something to do with that, even though we didn't. But we unpacked the idea of wokeism in that episode.
I really enjoyed that episode because I feel like one of my favorite things about doing this show is finding out what gaps in my knowledge I have and then being able to fill those gaps in really meaningful ways. And for that one, that was really powerful for me because I didn't know the history of the term woke and where it came from. And so we got to dive into that, which was, I think, really impactful for me.
We did 2 episodes back to back that were very related, but it was a total coincidence. We didn't plan this at all. We did one that was the United States Pledge of Allegiance to its flag. We also unpacked on that, like, Pledge of Allegiances in general around the world and other places that have pledges of allegiance, and how pledges of allegiance are used in different ways. I learned a lot in that episode. And then the very next episode, we talked about flags. Yeah. Now, again, not on purpose. And the flags episode was really more about how flags are used in symbolic communication and how to sort of interpret them. But anyway, those were kind of fun back-to-back ones that we did.
That happens every now and again where, like, we'll get on a streak and, like, some of the episodes will just happen to align really well because it's just like, either it's whoever's writing the notes just chose that and they end up getting released back to back or whatever it might be. But yeah, that was a real fun coincidence. It was also really fun to finally tackle the evil juggernaut that is Scientology and really unpack what that meant in the different levels and not spend $15,000 or $25,000 on getting to those levels to see Xenu.
That is, so the first time I was really worried that I was going to have to start investing in a regular lawyer was when we published an episode on Goop. The second time where I was actually convinced we were going to have to do that was when we published an episode on Scientology. And I think we're still fortunate enough to be small enough that those things have not come back to bite us just yet.
So fun.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But so to be fair, Goop was your idea and then Scientology was mine. So I think we're getting into that stage where now we're kind of getting into this risky behavior of, like, who else can we take down and see if we can kind of get away with it.
One of the things we did not try and take down, but we instead celebrated, was hero rats. This episode about how rats are used to detect tuberculosis, landmines, and how they're even working to train rats to find people under collapsed structures. Yeah. That was a cool one.
So cool.
Yeah, that goes in the animals suite.
Yeah, and I think that one was a lot of fun because that, I think, is so important for, like, demystifying, like, or debunking myths around rats. Like, everybody's so afraid of rats, and it's like they're actually, like, some of the coolest animals on the planet.
Yeah, they're amazing.
We did an episode on what it means to be tough on crime and found out that, like, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Often doesn't mean what I think people think it means, and ultimately is very expensive and not effective. So
right,
that falls into sort of political suite, probably.
Yeah.
One that I really enjoyed a lot, and again, this one I have thought about. I feel like we've done some like powerful, emotionally resonating episodes this year, was violence in video games.
Yeah.
That one we needed to tackle. I was glad that we did. I thought we handled, there's only a couple things in that upon a re-listen where I was like, I wish we maybe have talked about that a little bit differently, but I mostly really enjoyed what I learned and how we were able to unpack that episode.
Right, and especially because I like to play violent video games, so it was nice to know that I wasn't going to go out and murder someone.
That is nice, yes.
One of my favorite ones that we did too was Dancing Plagues, because it was like something I'd heard like in passing on another podcast. I was like, what the hell is that? And so we had to kind of like really dive into like what that meant and like how weird it's such a strange phenomenon. And I'm so glad that we got to do that one, because it's like one of those like off the beaten path topics that come up every now and again.
It was fun too. I remember you pitched this. You're like, oh, I was thinking of doing Dancing Plagues. And it's like, oh yeah, we should do that. And you were like, oh, you know what that is?
Yeah, I was surprised. Nobody else around me knew.
Yeah, I listen to so many podcasts, so it has come up. But another one I felt very strongly about, and again, I'm pretty happy with how he handled, was the homeowners associations or HOAs, and finally got to take them down a peg. The fact that John Oliver had recently done a whole deep dive on those did really help give me some good sources to orient to as well. But I wanted to have our take on that, and it was good. I actually think I was nicer to HOAs than I feel like I should have been or needed to be, and that's saying something, because we were not nice to them at all.
No. Yeah, you were still very kind, given that you you could feel like the heat of your rage coming off of the episode. Like I could feel it radiating through the Zoom.
There was a lot of beeping in that episode. Not just cutting the swearing. There was beeping of the swearing because it was profuse.
Yes, it was quite a bit. We also did prospect theory, and I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember much of that conversation. And that's not because of the episode topic. It's just like sometimes I'm a very forgetful person, and that's really just kind of what happened with that one. I
actually feel the same way. I mean, this was a behavior economics sort of oriented. It had what I called it was take the good with the bad, and it had to do with sort of evaluating things, how you compare the value of things over one another. But that one I also had totally forgotten that we'd done and didn't remember the bulk of the conversation, so I had to revisit that. But we did one on super tasters, as people who have the ability to detect flavors that other people don't detect.
Yeah. And this is where I think the rest of the year gets real wild. If you hadn't picked up that the year was wild already, I think it gets really interesting in the next couple episodes. Like it's a roller coaster. So we had orca behavior because we were finding that like orcas were attacking boats. And I think that's still one of my favorite like news headlines, but also that orcas have trends and fads.
Yeah, that was a wild one. And it just occurred to me that unfortunately we blew way past our first ad break, having so much fun on this. So we're going to do a few of these relatively close together just to get caught up. But first, it's the end of the year. Got to try and make a little money where we can. So we collect some from the advertisers.
Got to make some scratch.
Yeah, they say that they sponsor the show, and I don't know what they think that means or what that actually means, but we do get a little bit of money if you listen to us, and then we play ads for you. And so that's the thing we're doing.
Ads.
All right. So we were just talking about how we did prospect theory and super tasters, and then the fun discussion about orcas and all the strange behaviors that they engage in, which was really fun.
Yeah.
And then we had one that also really stood out to me. As you said, we're in sort of this wild time right now of nudist resorts, which, wow, what a fun and interesting dive that was to talk about the history of them, how they work, where you can find them, what they do. And I think the overall ethos of them, which is don't have fear and shame about the human body.
Right.
We were all born with one, and we were all born naked.
That's true.
And so we teach and cultivate a fear and shame and phobia around nudity. And these are a group of people who like to celebrate nudity. And I kind of applaud them for that. I think there's something really beautiful in the lack of shame and fear that they espouse.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that was one of the more enlightening episodes too. And like one of those ones that you go, you know, you have maybe some opinions about a thing, and then you learn about it, and it's not so scary, and also just creates this level of acceptance that you thought you were at, but you weren't quite there. Like leaving that episode, I was like, oh, like I support these even more now.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of left with that feeling, which was cool. So we did an episode on excited delirium, which was, another one of those wild ones, which is like, it ends up being just a kind of unique problem in systems where people kind of leverage that as a means to punish people and stuff. So it was kind of a weird one.
Vaguely inside of the politics domain. But yeah, maybe that would go in like the human abuse category of topics we covered.
Right.
Maybe related to that is speaking in tongues. That one maybe falls more heavily in the pseudoscience or myth busting section, because it turns out it is all made up crap. Actually, most people knew that, but we dig into the science of that a little bit.
Yeah, that one was a cool one to unpack, I think. Now, we also did one that was pretty intense. We did a history of slavery, and we did that in 2 episodes, and I feel like that was some of our best work, but I think that was also some of the most intense work that we've done. Yeah,
and I think, unfortunately, it had to be incomplete. I think you could spend hundreds of episodes really diving into the horrors and awfulness of slavery, but it was important when all of a sudden there was some people saying, hey, slavery was kind of good, and we're like, no, it was not.
Yeah.
And also, you.
Exactly. Yeah, that came right out of old Big Boy Shoes DeSantis.
Yep.
And his whole thing. So, man, what a piece of We did an episode on veganism, which I thought was really fun, and apparently got a lot of like weird backlash for some reason.
Yes, yeah.
Like trolley stuff. It was like trolley stuff.
Yeah, it was mostly trolley stuff. Inspiring a later episode we'll get to. But I did like that one. I felt like we handled it actually with less sort of fervor than you might expect from someone who's been practicing that lifestyle for many, many years. And, I tried to be respectful on it, and it is what it is. Now, I ran across this interesting fella earlier in the year and decided to do sort of a profile episode of his story. His name was David Bro. He was this guy who just really preached compassion and love toward fellow humans. And I found it really inspiring, his story. And it was also a tragic one. It felt like it merited and warranted like a sort of a lengthy discussion.
Well, I think especially because you and I have the value of like kindness and like goodness to people. Like, I think that was just one of those examples of like, how far does that go and what does that look like? And I thought that was a more interesting story for sure. Then we did one on professional wrestling, which is very different than David Bro. What a time. Yeah. What a time that is. I mean, that one, I felt like, I don't remember exactly why I wanted to do that one. I think I was probably just watching wrestling and I was like, we should do one on this.
Sure.
Why do people even like this? I don't know. I feel like that one was really goofy, but also kind of fun.
I think it was super fun.
And like very light compared to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, no, I thought it was super fun. I think it was one of the most fun episodes all year, actually. And you did a beautiful job organizing the notes around that. So,
thank you.
We decided to talk about, I guess you could put this in sort of maybe the disability category, but maybe it's just like the extremes of human experience, because then you could put super tasters in there.
Right.
We also talked about color deficiency. So what the psychological experience is for people who cannot see the full spectrum of colors that you would generally expect someone to be able to see because of how the rods or the cones actually work or don't work, so to speak, in their eyes.
Right. And then we discovered that, those glasses that are really expensive don't make you see colors the way that people think it does. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, if you literally can't see a color, a set of glasses will not make you see that color.
Yeah, what it'll do is it'll untangle those colors from one another so that when they looked confused to your eyes, they then looked distinct to your eyes. I mean, it really is only applicable to the most common type of color blindness. And again, it just helps those colors seem distinguished, not that they are going to magically allow your cones to work.
Right. We did an episode on trolls, specifically internet trolls, and why people do that. I think that one was pretty insightful as well, but also sparked by just like trolls are annoying.
Yeah.
So we want to know why trolls are annoying,
Yeah, we see trolls, we hear about trolls. We got the lovely experience of interacting with some trolls online, and so decided it was worth talking about. I put together a 2-part episode on the TSA because I wanted to understand that system, how it was supposed to work when I know that it doesn't. And so we learned a lot about mostly how wildly inefficient and ineffective it is and what a waste of time and money it is for everybody. Nevertheless, like, everybody likes it. It was one of those weird positions where it's like, we are cool with spending a boatload of time and money on this thing that we know
billions
doesn't work
of dollars.
because billions, literally, because it makes us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that doesn't make logical sense to me, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess is what I would land on. And then we did social media influencers, which we were really nervous about because we didn't want to become a target for many social media influencers. But I think we did a good job, and I think that we gave them credit for it being quite a difficult job for many people.
Yeah, they work really hard. They work really hard. And yes, it was one. I agree. I was like, this is a weird job. It is a weird job to talk about. It is a weird job to describe. It is weird that so many people want to do it, and had to unpack that. But also, I think we were fair and kind to them. But
yeah,
we talked about in a very recent release, the Uncanny Valley, understanding sort of what that is and how it came to be and how we might escape it if ever, and whether or not it's even real.
Right.
And so that was an interesting one.
Yep. And we just wrapped our last episode of the year, and that was on brainwashing. And I think that one seemed to go pretty well as well. And I think what we've learned is like most of the stuff that we discovered does not exist throughout this year. So there was a lot of cool animal behavior, a lot of things that didn't exist, and a lot of like just really crappy politics stuff. So it's been a fun year.
It has been an emotionally roller coaster,
yes,
or I guess dynamic year is the way to put it. Of course, we actually did some other episodes, Halloween and nostalgia episodes. First, we'll do the advertiser thing and then come back and talk about those.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we list all of our standard episodes. If you've been with us for a while, you know that we do our Halloween-themed episodes, and this year we happened to be oriented to Satan.
Yes, and so the first episode we opened with was left-hand path magic. So we got to talk about sex magic and what that looked like and all of the evils, and how left-hand path magic was the opposite of good white magic.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah, and then we talked about Satanism, what the tenets of Satanism are, the history of Satanism, where Satan worship exists. There's like theistic versus atheistic Satanism. That one was a fun one to do, for sure.
Yeah. And how we discovered that we might actually be Satanists ourselves to some degree.
Yeah.
We also did a satanic panic, which I think is in line with some of the other kind of scare trends. One specifically, we talked about that in the brainwashing episode.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the quote unquote Red Scare. And so I thought that one was really fun to kind of talk about a very particular time in the 80s and 90s where everybody was so afraid of the devil and all the things he may do.
And finally, we concluded our Halloween series this year with a discussion on the philosophy of evil.
Ooh.
What it is not, and how to understand it psychologically.
We learned it's a useless title for the most part.
It is a useless title, like some of the others.
Yes, exactly. And so this year we only did 4 nostalgia episodes. We talked about doing 12. Yeah. We ended up doing 4. Yeah. All that means, for dear listener, is that we created more work for ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
On top of that, we've been putting together a new type of episode that will be in addition to our normal scheduled releases that you have heard none of, but we've mentioned many times, called minis. We will definitely be launching those next year, but they should be short versions, like 10 to 15 minute weekly digestible chunks of information on random small topics that will come out once a week. We've recorded a lot of them. Most of them are edited and ready to go. We're just sort of waiting until we feel like we're in a good groove of record and edit to get those rolling out. So the plan is early next year, you'll start seeing extra stuff show up in your feed for us that will comprise these smaller bite-sized short episodes.
Absolutely.
Which is to say, just to expand on your point, is that we did so much work this year.
Yes.
And it was so much more than we have done in some of the past years, because it was mostly just Shane and I writing this year and recording, and most of that was generating new content as opposed to rehashing old content, which we did more of last year, as opposed to bringing on interviewees, which we did a lot more last year. We made our lives way harder this year than we have done in the past.
I don't know why we did that. That seems like a very silly thing to do, but we did.
It does. Yeah.
As far as our nostalgia episodes go, we revisited consciousness, which, not much has changed in that world.
Yep. Another useless term. We re-released polygraph tests. Again, little has changed. They continue to suck at what they do.
Yes. We also decided to go back into what happened to Asperger's syndrome and just discovered that somehow, some way, another one of our episodes got back to the history of Nazis.
Yeah. And some of the weirdest, like, Nazi defenders that reached out to us. I don't know why, but that was a thing that
it was very
unexpectedly came out of that discussion that I thought was just like, hey, remember when we talked about this? And then anyway, And then the last nostalgia episode we recently released on revisiting the bystander effect, the idea that when the more people there are around, the fewer of them that will actually intervene. And something that I failed to think about when I was re-listening to the episode after we recorded it, because I always do that for sort of quality control. It occurred to me as we talked about, like, the more people there were, the smaller the percentage of people that intervened. And the thing that occurred to me is like, well, yeah, I mean, the more people there are, the smaller a percentage that could intervene,
Right.
Like if it was 5 people and 2 of them intervened, or like, let's say there was 5 people around and 3 of them intervened, or 10 people around and 6 of them intervened, like the proportion stays exactly the same, even if the number of people increases. And so
Right.
if you maintain 5 or 60%, like at some point it becomes an unwieldy amount of people who are trying to do something.
Too many people helping.
Yeah, if it stays 3 people helping every time, that's probably enough.
Right.
And that percentage is going to decrease more and more, even as the absolute number of people stays the same.
Right.
But anyway, that was a revisit episode that was worth doing.
Yeah, that one was fun.
So those are the episodes we released. We got some cool statistics. As I said, our best data analytics come from Spotify. So
Yeah.
good on Spotify. Let's quickly dive into some of our wrapped statistics that everybody likes to do at the end of the year. And because they give us, as podcasters, we get different stats than other people. We learned that for the second year in a row, at least, our top episode was organizational psychology, episode like 54 or something, released in our maybe second year as a podcast. So this was listened to 999% more than our average episodes.
Which I'm not sure how or why or where that's a wild number.
As I've been looking at this, because again, this is the second year this has happened, I really think that we're going to need to do a nostalgia or just another episode on this to see if we can figure out how we bottled lightning on that one. But 28% of our new listeners started on that episode, so it is a banger, apparently.
I wonder if that's like, I don't know, linked in a course somewhere.
Yeah, like, maybe that's what it is.
Maybe we're part of a college curriculum. If we are, let us know. I mean, we're good with that. That's cool with us.
Yeah.
So
no complaints.
We also learned that 90% of our listeners discovered us this year. So we got a lot of new folks. So welcome. We love you all. Yeah. And we're glad that you're here.
That's exciting. Most of our new listeners were in the United States, Australia, United Kingdom, Germany, and New Zealand. That actually does mirror where most of our listens happen. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. 78 countries are listening to us, which I thought was cool. The U.S. was our top, but only accounted for 46%. So less than half of our listeners are from the U.S., which I think is actually really cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. Hi, international people. We see you. Thanks for being here with us.
Happy summer, Australia.
We see you, by the way, is a colloquial term meaning we're glad we're here and we respect you. We don't actually see you. That would be weird.
We recognize that you're participating in this experiment with us.
Yes, that's what it is. More well said than I said it. So how people found us. Most people found us that were shared via a direct link, meaning someone who listened to us sent a link to someone else to listen to us. That was 34%. Somebody texted that link. That was 30%. Somebody used WhatsApp, which makes a lot of sense. That's the most common, I think, international communication tool. That was 14%. 11% on Instagram and 11% were other. I'm not sure what that was, but okay.
Maybe pigeons.
Sure, probably. That makes sense.
It's fun. It's wild that Spotify has pigeons now to send links. So it's a strange new program they're doing. Our ratings went up. So our rating went to 5.0 up from 4.9 last year. So, I mean, we're a good podcast. So you're welcome is really what I should be saying there. Not thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And thank you.
Oh, but also thank you.
And apparently all those people we made angry with our veganism episode did not affect that. So
nope.
Way to counter them. So we had a 34% growth in listeners, 52% growth in streams, and a whopping 66% growth in followers. This is actually quite easily the steepest amount of increase we have had in new followers on Spotify in the history of us collecting or having any data to look at on this.
Yeah, which is really, really cool. We were top 10 for 837 people and the top 5 for 452 people, which is really cool.
That was cool. And then we were the top podcast for 79 fans. So very honored to have been in your top top podcast. I mean, thank you. We appreciate you.
Honored that you're listening in general, but thank you for giving us that much of your time and attention and ear space. Yes,
exactly. You're very kind, and we're lucky to have you here. Thank you for giving us your time. Oh, I mentioned our followers. We went from 1,217 on January 1st to 1,913 on the date that we're recording it. Now, we are still a little early in December. It'd be really cool if we close out December with a cool 2,000. So if you want to tell your friends, get us that extra 87 followers on Spotify to cross that 2,000.
We're so close.
Yeah, that'd give us the warm fuzzies. We'll report that in our first of the year episode, or get as close to it as we can.
Yeah.
Help us cross 2,000. That'd be fun.
You know what doesn't help us cross 2,000 though?
Ads. Well, let us regale you with some of the things that we have consumed in terms of entertainment. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I'm just going to list them because we've already actually been doing this for longer than I thought we would, given today's topic.
We are skilled.
we are. If being able to pontificate endlessly is a skill, we are masters of this.
Nailed it.
Given that we have a professional podcast, if you could call it professional, you could say we are professionals at that skill.
Yeah.
I only read, 8 books this year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 8 books. I read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi.
Great book.
So I finished this year. Actually, I started it last year, but finished it this year. I've read Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, which is a fun fiction book. Caffeine by Michael Pollan. Children of Dune by Frank Herbert. I was finishing the sort of first 3. What If 2 came out this year by Randall Munroe. That was a lot of fun. I'm not sure if you could call that reading it a book, but I mean, I counted it. It was really fun. I read the whole thing.
I count it.
I read Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline.
It's good.
And Artemis by Andy Weir. And then just finished Outlive. Yeah, Artemis was very fun. And then just finished Outlive by Peter Attia.
Cool. I mean, it's a good book list. Children of Dune is such a wild time.
Yes, that is an interesting one. That definitely takes some turns you may not have expected.
All right, so this year I read 70 books. I'm not going to list them all, but I am going to list the ones that I think were probably the better of the books. So I started the year reading The Hollow Ones by Guillermo del Toro, and that was a really cool kind of an interesting take on demon possession in horror, which I thought was really great. I read Factotum by Bukowski. Charles Bukowski, if you're familiar with his work, he's got very simple prose, kind of gritty, but I always like his stuff. And I also read Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut, which, is one of my favorite books. Also, reading it back, I loved the trajectory of that story, but going back and reading it, it's a very different read as I get older.
I should revisit it. I loved that book when I was younger.
You should revisit it, and you might go, "Oh, that's bad. That's a bad premise." There's some stuff in it where you're like, "Oh no." But also is written in the 50s. So it's very interesting, different time. I also read God Emperor of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Dune Chapter House, which are the books 4, 5, 6 in the Dune series. And so I got to wrap up the original Herbert series, the second trilogy.
Right.
I read a book about cryptids called Cryptid Creatures of Florida, which was not good. And then I read The Stand, The Talisman, and Night Shift by Stephen King. I finally got to read A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. I got to read Young Till I'm Old by Michael Paul Anthony, it's a memoir of growing up in the Daytona punk scene. So that was a fun one. I also got to read Punk Paradox by Greg Graffin. And I finally read The Martian by Andy Weir.
One of my favorites. So good.
Incredible. As far as some science books that I read this year that I thought were really good, The Grieving Brain by O'Connor was really, really good. It kind of talked about the neurology of grief and what that looked like.
Okay.
I got to read Rebooting Capitalism by Anthony Biglin, which I thought was a really interesting take on kind of the how to make capitalism work better. But I think my favorite book that I read this year was The Fisherman by John Langan.
Oh.
That was such a wild and interesting horror story that has to do I have a fascination with Appalachian lore. And so this is really cool horror story that's very Lovecraftian, that's based in Appalachian lore. So some really, really fascinating stuff there. And it's done so well, so scary. So
nice.
Yeah.
I'll go through my movie list very quickly. I won't spend any time on any of them, just to say what they are. I watched The Heat, The Menu, Ambulance, Look Away, 37 Meters Down, Hypnotic, The Gift, The Bubble, Shotgun Wedding, Your Place or Mine, Halloween Ends, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania, We Have a Ghost, Eurovision, Atlantis, Let's Kill Ward's Wife, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Ones Below, Pinocchio, the Guillermo del Toro version, Guns Akimbo, The Woman King, Sea Beast, Strange World, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, The Gentleman, Finch, Murder Mystery 2, Luther, Fallen Sun, Tickets to Paradise, The Bad Guys, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Couples Retreat, Solace, The Outlaws, Violent Night, Happiness for Beginners, Keeping Up with the Joneses, Bros, They Came Together, Vacation Friends 2, You're So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah, Scream 6, Instant Family, No One Will Save You, The Wrath of Becky, Totally Killer, A Haunting in Venice, Unseen, I Came By, Bones and All, Death on the Nile, The Nun 2, You're Next, El Camino Christmas, Werewolves Within, Elemental, and Knock at the Cabin.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was so much.
That was so much. And then I watched 33 TV seasons. I'll do it just really quick. Inside Man, His Dark Materials, Season 3, The Devil's Hour, Big Mouth, Seasons 3 through 6, The Last of Us, Human Resources, the first season, White Lotus, Seasons 1 and 2, Dahmer, Big Sky, Rick and Morty, Seasons 5 and 6, Oni, Love, Death, and Robots, all 3 seasons, Mandalorian, Season 3, Ghosts, Season 2, Masked Singer, Season 9, and now Season 10 is almost done, Animal Control, Season 1, Ted Lasso, Season 3, Superstore, all 6 seasons, so way more seasons than I thought, Jury Duty, Black Mirror, Season 6, Silo, Is It Cake, Season 2, Hack My Home, Good Omens, Season 2, Crime Scene Kitchen, Seasons 1 and 2, Miracle Workers, Season 4, Secret Invasion, The Bear, Seasons 1 and 2.
So good.
The Wheel of Time, Season 2, Naked Attraction, Season 1, The Bear, Season 2, I said that one already, Cabinet of Curiosities, Season 1, and Loki, Season 2.
So much. I mean, so I think, where it like, if I probably read less books, I'd be able to consume more movies and television.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I'm not saying I went the right direction. I'm just saying that's what I did.
I listen, I think it's great. I think it's great. As somebody who grew up like spending a lot of time watching movies and stuff, I just absolutely adore cinema. Like, I think that's like one of my favorite things, movies and TV. I think it's so great. And I think it's such a unique way, like such a fun way to tell a story. So I know who to go to when I need recommendations.
I watch a lot of movies and arguably much more television.
Do you have a favorite for the year?
Favorite movie or show or what? Or both?
Either one.
Ooh, let me look at my list again one more time. It's hard because there's sort of a recency bias. It's sort of the ones that really stand out to me. I will say that The Menu really stuck with me for a long time. That one I really liked. Everything Everywhere All at Once was really, really unique, and I did enjoy. The ones that I've actually gone back to and like rewatched a second time are Murder Mystery 2, which just because it's really funny.
Okay.
Oh, The Haunting in Venice one kicked off like me watching the other, like rewatched A Murder on the Orient Express and then watched Murder on the Nile because those or Death on the Nile, that's what it was. So yeah, I mean, all of those were good. I would say, man, favorite of the year. Weirdly, quite possibly Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. That was one of the most fun movies. Like it was
probably
so
going
fun.
in with like pretty low expectations for it.
Very much so. It was so fun. It was so silly. It was so comical and just like well done. That one was high up there. Totally Killer was really good too. But I mean, it was sort of a standard sort of time travel movie. But as far as TV shows go, man, Love, Death, and Robots has really stuck with me. I was blown away at that series. So that one very high on my list. I think about it a lot, and I'm really hoping they do another season at some point.
Cool. All right, I love it.
But whenever anybody asks me like, "Oh, what show should I watch?" and I say Jury Duty, and then I'll tell you other things after that. But start there.
Yeah, that is a fun one.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should. Do you have any like major movies or TV you'd like to recap before we get into?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I really always enjoy Great British Baking Show, so whenever that comes up, I'm always having a lot of fun with that.
Oh, I need to add that to my list. I forgot. That one I also just finished.
Yeah, the last season just finished.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed Everything Everywhere All at Once. I thought that was just such a unique story, and it was just so fun. And it was really great to see Ke Huy Quan to get some recognition.
Oh, he was great in that too.
He's so good in it, and he was so good in Loki too. Like, I mean, he's just such a gem. And so, like, it's one of those things where you're just so happy for him doing such cool and fun work.
Really, really am. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's do one more for the advertisers, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Sounds good.
Poured one out for the advertisers. We do have, I think it's worth acknowledging the pour one out in a bad way. Like we had a good drink we wanted to keep, and then someone knocked us and spilled out of our hand. And that's what advertisers are. They're the knock the drink out of your hand people.
So rude.
We lost again. These are the people who passed away this year. So it's kind of a mix. The way it's sort of organized, this is mostly sort of celebrities. There's way, way, way too many to want to do a whole list, but I tried to grab the ones that I think were the most famous, then some major scientists, and then specifically some behavior analysts this year. So I'll take a few of the celebrities and you can take a few, and then we'll get the scientists.
Yeah.
Norman Lear, Sandra Day O'Connor, not a celebrity, but was the first female justice on the Supreme Court. Rosalind Carter, Matthew Perry, and Dianne Feinstein, again, another politician, as just some major figures that passed away this year.
Michael Gambon, Jimmy Buffett, I almost said Jimmy Buffet, Bob Barker, Paul Rubens, and Sinead O'Connor.
And then there was also Tony Bennett, singer, did a duet with Lady Gaga, I believe. Alan Arkin, Cormac McCarthy, Tina Turner, Jerry Springer, and then Richard Belzer, who people mostly know from Law and Order, I think.
Yeah. Now, as far as the scientists go, we had John Goodenough, which is such a great last name.
Right.
He was the creator of the lithium-ion battery. And there was Hubert Reeves, who was an astrophysicist.
There was also Paul Berg, who was a Nobel Prize winner for recombinant DNA, whatever work that he did with that. And then Evelyn Fox Keller, who was a science philosopher and science historian that was well known and respected in the science community.
Super important. And then there was, as far as behavior analysts go, there was Dr. Joseph Pear, who did some really great work in the precision teaching world, right? Or the direct instruction world.
No, it was a personalized system of instruction, or PSI.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
PSI, that's what I meant. Yep.
Not unrelated, just a slightly different version of it.
Yeah.
That'd actually be a fun topic to tackle at some point, is the PSI system.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Joe Pear. One of the arguably most well-recognized names in all behavior analysts, Brian Iwata, passed away this year. Architect of the functional analysis. Most behavior analysts will recognize that term.
And then Henry S. Pennypacker, I had my introduction to him through my research class in experimental design through the Johnson and Pennypacker book, the textbook that was widely used there.
Yep. Went by Hank Pennypacker, big in the precision teaching community, but then wrote the research methods book and started a widely used business for early detection and screening of breast cancer called MammaCare.
Okay.
He did some cool work that might also be a topic worth unpacking at some point in the near future.
Absolutely.
So they will be missed. Probably some of those people more than others, because some of them were somewhat controversial figures, but at least sad that we lost some important behavior analysts this year and some important scientists. Most of these people did live late into life and had full, rich lives. So I wouldn't call most of these tragedies, but nevertheless, it's always sad when we lose someone who was a great contribution to science in our world.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with some quick recommendations. But first, I actually maybe should have started with this. The people who help make this show happen are our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for being here as always. If you'd like to join us on Patreon, you get to see a video of us recording this in our pajamas or something that's equivalent to pajamas functionally for us anyway.
Yeah.
You also get other behind the scenes content. And the people who benefit from that because they are lovely, generous, supportive human beings includes Mike N, Megan, Layla, Mike T, Justin, Kim, Joshua, Brad, Stephanie, Olivia, Brian, and Ashley. Thank you all so much. Of course, thank you to my team. Shane and myself do fact checking and writing. Justin is our audio production and sound engineer, and Emma Wilson is our social media coordinator. And if you would like to talk to us about your experience with the year and your reflections, or comment about anything we've said here, you can email us directly at info@wwd.podcast.com. You can reach out to us on the social media platforms. Consider subscribing, getting someone and your friends to follow us on Spotify if you're not already. Get us up to that 2,000 mark. Like and subscribe, leave a rating and review, and do all those things. Is there anything I'm missing or anything you'd like to add before we move on to our recommendations to close out 2023?
No, I don't think I have anything on that front.
Recommendations.
Okay, well, hopefully someone listened long enough to hear this. I'm just going to share it really quick. I gave you in that list of movies, one of them was the movie A Knock at the Cabin. Now, as a quick backstory, Many years ago, I watched this movie called Lady in the Water, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. And it was one of the few times in my life I was so upset at how bad the movie was that I wanted my life back afterward because of how much time I felt it wasted. I was so angry at M. Night Shyamalan for making such a horrible piece of unforgivable garbage that I said I will never watch another film that he does. And then he went out to put out Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was widely panned as a terrible movie, as well as a series of other flops that went badly. And I felt rightly justified in writing off him as a terrible director of movies, even though I really, really liked The Sixth Sense and was okay with like Signs and more so The Village. But anyway, I was tired of his shtick. I hated Lady in the Water tremendously and did not want to watch any more of his. And then this movie came up with a really good trailer called A Knock at the Cabin, and my partner insisted that we try it even though it was M. Night Shyamalan, and we did, and I'm glad we did because it was actually really, really good. He, I think, has really grown in his writing and directing skills. If this is any evidence of that, I actually really enjoyed it a lot. And it does not have a twist. Maybe spoiler alert, it is just the story as it unfolds.
I like that.
I'll only say what's in the trailer. I won't give anything else away. Essentially, a group of people shows up at a cabin and insists the people inside make a sacrifice, and they have to do this to prevent the apocalypse. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Some of the best acting I have ever seen from Dave Bautista as the lead. Overall, the performances were absolutely stellar. Rupert Grint is really good. Everyone does a very good job. And the movie, I think, is, for being sort of contained inside the cabin, beautifully well executed. So I recommend A Knock at the Cabin, currently available for streaming on Amazon Prime, assuming it's still there at the time you listen to this.
Yeah, I always like those movies that are like kind of a little bit claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Where it's like the sets are real small and like very intimate. Like I like this, I think it's The Strangers is one that's like that, where it's like all in the same place.
Yeah.
Or like even the first Saw movie, right? The first Saw movie is like in the same confine. So I always like those movies like that and how well they can execute a story in that space. I'm going to recommend a local cookie place. They do deliver, so you can order and they will ship you stuff. That is a place called Cookie Now, spelled KOKKIENOW at cookienow.com.
Are the two O's in there? Because you said KOKKIE, which I would feel like is pronounced cocky.
Yeah, that's not how you spell that. I'm exhausted. It's KOOKIE.
Got it.
Now, NOW. Cookienow.com. They make these kind of like small batch, just like really good cookies. They've got chocolate chip, cookies and cream. They do a gluten-free one. Right now, as far as I can tell, they don't do any vegan ones, unfortunately, but they'll do some seasonal ones, and they might be able to do some requests. They have some cool ones. They have a Biscoff cookie. They've got a circus animal cookie, which is a lot of fun. And right now, they're doing a Santa surprise cookie, which is like a chocolate peppermint, which is really good. Like a milk and cookies and peppermint. So I ran into them at like a food mart, like a festival kind of situation. And it was really good. And the guy was really nice. And so I just, it's a local place and I just recommend supporting them.
Cool. All right, very good. Well, I started this episode by saying this is going to be a short one, and this is not only not a short one, but is, I think, longer than the average length of every episode we put out this year.
Yes.
By kind of a lot. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Sort of reflection and talking about movies and TV books that we like is fun, and music and whatnot. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I forgot before we sign off for 2023, Shane?
No, just thank you for being here.
Yes.
You know, we can't do it without you listening to us, and we're going to continue to do this into the next year, and hopefully we continue to do good stuff for you also.
Absolutely. Thank you for another awesome year. That's all I've got. So this is Abraham.
And this is Shane.
Happy New Year. We're out.
Happy New Year. See ya.
You've been listening to Why We Do What We Do. You can learn more about this and other episodes by going to www.wwdpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you have an awesome day.